Namaskar, hello, and welcome to yet another important session in the day two of two-day APAC Skill and Entrepreneurship Innovation Conclave being hosted by the Government of Kerala, Department of Labor and Skill, and organized by APAC News Network. So we just to take you all to the audience and also the speakers who have joined us. We had an amazing inaugural session in the day one with participation from various speakers with the program chair, Mr. Satyajit Rajan, Additional Chief Secretary, Labour and Skills Department, Government of Kerala, a special message by the Skills Minister of Kerala. At the same time, a keynote address from by the senior bureaucrat from the state of Karnataka, Srimati K. Ratnaprabha. She is the chairperson, Karnataka Skill Development Authority, and also a special address by Mr. Praveen Kumar, who is the secretary with the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India, and he had various other speakers who are especially the policy makers and the head of the departments in the respective states and various educators. We also had a very special session which was joined by various directors of IIT from Gujarat, IIT Gandhinagar, Indore IIT, IIT Madras, IIT Palakkad, and many others. So without further ado, and over 800 delegates uh, have been participating actively in our sessions throughout these 2 days. There is also a virtual expo where some of our partners have displayed their services, solutions, and uh, their products. So now I welcome all our esteemed speakers of this important session, which is focusing on research and innovations as drivers of higher education and India's preparedness, especially in these new world order, the post-COVID era, we can tell. My name is Sudhir Gautam. I'm the resident editor and head for South India with the PAC News Network. Uh, I would call upon all the audience in join me in welcoming our first speaker of this session, Dr. Indu Rao, who is the director with the Vellore Institute of Technology. Thank you very much, Dr. Indu, for joining us. We're also joined by Ms. Neha Patel, who is the director, Som Lalit Institute of Managing Studies. Thank you very much, Ms. Dr. Neha.
Thank
We
you.
are also joined by Mr. Devendra Narain, who is the director of the corporate relations, Shobit University. Thank you, Mr. For joining us, Mr. Narain. And also Dr. Kavita Mathur, who is Dean and Professor, School of Business, Galgotias University. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank
Kavita.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
For the initial remarks, I would come to Dr. Indu Rao. Uh, Madam, we would like to have the views. How is your institution and your faculty is moving towards making the research and innovation which would be driving the higher education?
Thank you, Sudhir. It's always a pleasure to be in your events. And I have had a very good experience. They're very lively discussions to the points which are very relevant to and contemporary to the higher education. And it covers majority institutions across the country. So I compliment you first. Regarding the topic that you have asked us for today's panel, research and innovations as drivers of higher education. I go to my institution, I would like to mention that this is a very, very important issue. Although it's talked again and again everywhere, our preparedness for the same is not sufficient. And we need to make sure that research and innovation becomes a culture in our higher education institutions. Because if you just go back to our history, the Indian ancient culture, we had a parampara of Guru and Shishya. And if you know that Guru was the one who created knowledge, that creation of knowledge is equivalent to the research that we are asking our academicians to do today. Even the Shishyas, they would just carry the message of the knowledge that was generated by the Guru and would spread it. So I think in a way what we are doing in our institutions for the last 40, 50 years is that some body of literature that has been developed, And of course, not by the gurus of our ancient times, but most of the body of literature that is developed in the West. And all we are doing is we are repeating those same things and models that were developed from the books, and our teachers are teaching that. So then we are just playing the role of a shishya to guru. That was not in the contemporary context, which is why there is a need for research and innovation. We need to have a huge body of literature that is originated, that is created by our academicians based on the contemporary problems and solutions and models developed. And again, the other point is that it's not we have not created wisdom, only that we have not documented it. There is enough wisdom created, which is by our businessmen, with our entrepreneurs, some people who have done well, and in different fields, different disciplines. So we need to address that gap, that where is the wisdom, where is the knowledge, and it's not been brought into literature. So research and innovation is actually in terms of academics, and especially in higher education institutions, this is the number one priority that we have to do. We have to translate that wisdom from different parts of our country into books, into theories, into case studies, into models, and get it established in the international business literature, so that it should be that other parts of the world and other people are actually reading that and disseminating that information to the scholars around the globe. That is where we have to reach, but this is where we are as of today. So in between, there is a huge gap which we have to bridge. In VIT, we have started it much earlier. We have more than 10 research centers on the latest technologies, whether it is nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, IoT, and also in areas related to design and other things. We lay a very big emphasis on research. If you know, the Scopus publications in VIT annually in 1 year are 3,500 to 4,000, which is the highest, and we top in the country, which will give you an idea of the culture that we are creating to do research. And then it has to be, see, I cannot say that my research is good. Somebody has to acknowledge internationally that my research is good, which is why there are these databases which are established internationally, and your academicians have to reach those databases and publish their research there. So then it is disseminated to the world, and other people will start citing your research, and that is how we will get our name. Our higher education institutions will get a name in the field of research and innovation. Second thing is, we have done a lot in the area of projects. Sponsored projects are now coming in huge way by DST and other agencies in the government, and we should make proposals. Before making proposals, we should have some credentials, some established work that we have done in a particular field, that we have expertise, and then we should apply for projects. We are doing it in a big way in terms of sponsored research and projects that are going on in VIT. And the university as such is encouraging all the professors and giving incentives to do more and more of these proposals and then execute them. And there are performance indicators which are linked to both published research as well as executed projects and research, the sponsored projects. And that is how we are encouraging our faculty and our institution to do well in both research and innovation.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing, Dr. Indu Rao. As you said, there is a huge gap for where we have to reach, and there is a bridge that is very essential. Now, I come to Dr. Neha. We would like to have your views on these lines, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate a few things which Dr. Indu Rao ma'am has already said. But if you look at the new NEP policy that we have, they've done a very good thing. You have only certain universities will be focusing on research, and there'll be certain universities or small-time institutes will be focusing on as training institute. Because I'm not a very big university, okay? I'm a very small management college affiliated to a big university. So in my case, my students are coming to me for placements. Now, the current scenario for me, my faculties are performance indicators indicate research, right? But I'm getting my student strength because of my placements. So I think the faculty, there's a lot of change, a thought process, which I'm very happy to see in the new education policy. So that is something which I think no one is talking about. Yes, the rules have been made, but where is the institute supposed to focus on? Am I supposed to be a training institute? Am I supposed to be an imitator? Or do I take it forward and I do what I'm doing? Or because I'm a management institute, I start focusing on research. I think some guidelines and parameters which are different should be taken care at the center level. To come back on research and innovation, I think it's very important because there was a very long time ago, I attended a few things, how to get your papers published in Scopus and, all those things. And they said the biggest problem we have from India is we do not come up with innovative titles. What we do is researchers, because there's a performance indicator, we will look up, we will see, okay, someone has done this research in US or in UK or in Germany. I will do the same thing, copy it for India, for my state, and get it printed. He said that's why we are seeing a lack of the fact is that not in the good journals, in ABDC, when we look at the A journals, we see very few Indian institutes being present out there. Now, for that, what we have tried to do in our institute is we have tried to work with our small time entrepreneurs. Luckily, in Ahmedabad, we are an entrepreneurial city, or a state actually, Gujarat. So a lot of small brands and actually some big regional brands are there, wherein the faculties have been mandated to work with them, not on just pure consultancy, but also student summer internship and the faculties. And then we work at the management consultancy level. Now, what is happening because of that is the knowledge base, the knowledge and what is there, what is innovating at the corporate level is directly coming on to our students. And that has played a huge role in the teaching part of us. For instance, 5 years ago, we were focusing on 20-page case studies. Now we're doing smaller case studies, but we're giving them live case studies of existing small-time entrepreneurs existing in my city. They could be 5 crores, they could be 50 crores, they could be 25 crores. But my students are constantly working with that, and that is helping the faculties also to learn, and innovate. So we worked on our teaching methodology. We basically worked on that. And also when I look at, when we say research and education, research and innovation, I think we need to understand somewhere wherein I have a lot of esteemed panelists with me, that what is the role of the institute? What am I supposed to do? What is the vision that I'm supposed to have? And hence pass that on to my faculties, because right now I think we all, VIT is a very big institute, so they probably have these research centers. But a place like ours, we have Gujarat Technological University, we have a lot of things, but I'm a small institute which is affiliated to that. What is our role? And that, I think, clarity is required, because innovation is happening a lot at smaller institutes in terms of, but research is, I think, not innovative according to me. It is a copy which is happening of someone has printed a paper out there up in the West. I tweak the title, get the same thing done out here, and I go ahead and get it presented in a UGC care or a ABDC, which I think is not true research. It's a copycat research at the end of the day. And to take one more thing on what we have done at my institute is, we realized over a period of time that we are very good with placements. So in our placements, a lot of our students were getting placed in our urban or rural areas. So we now have made it mandatory for all our students where they have to work with in the rural scenarios. So in the second semester, we take them to different villages. They understand, they observe, they do research, they find out distribution, they do logistics. And I think because of that, touchwood, we see a huge increase in our placement in spite of COVID out here. So that's what are my thoughts currently.
Thank you very much, Dr. Neha, for sharing that. As you said, we need to come up with some innovative title. So now I would come to Mr. Narain, Director with the Shobit University. Sir, we would like to have your initial remarks on this line.
Thank you for inviting me for this session. And this is a very relevant session from the today's scenario, But, we need to understand the basic problem why this, we are not, Indian universities are not being treated as innovating or research university. So my understanding is that, because I'm majorly looking for with the corporates, so my understanding is that somewhere, somehow, we are not able to understand the difference between the literacy and education. And because we are not able to understand the difference between the literacy and education, so we are not able to incorporate knowledge into the higher education system. since childhood, we've been make, learn, understand that your main objective to complete your education, so-called education, basically you are only becoming literate, and then from that you should be employable. Even till before this new education policy are only what we heard in the platforms that the student of India are not employable. So if we want to increase research, if we really want to talk about innovation, so we need to change our mindset. From employability, we need to talk about entrepreneurship, we need to talk about startups, we need to talk about innovation, we need to talk about basically knowledge. And innovation comes only once we are able to understand the learning and relearning. Until we don't understand that, we are not able to become research lead universities or institutions. The second thing is that why we are always thinking that we have to compete in research with the big developed nation or big university. The importance is that whatever innovation, whatever research, whatever paper we are publishing, it should have a social relevance. So why not we try to find out that whatever we are teaching in our universities, whatever knowledge we are providing to our students in higher education, it should have a relevance with the social ecosystem. Like in Shobit University, what we did when we started first TBI, it's one of the 11 TBI in the country. So we intentionally talk about that how we can use local products, especially like for example, our TBI is more about the use of sugarcane bagasse, which is basically a waste. So now we are training local students, local guys to how to create innovative things with the sugarcane bagasse. Like for example, active carbon for water purification, paper, food for animals. So there are things which we are working, and that is going to help the local, because the sugarcane bagasse as a waste is available ample. So if and we are happy that we are now in a second stage of that TBI. Now we are telling students to come out and then go for starting your startups. So that social impact is very important whenever we are talking about research and innovation. And the day we understand the basic difference between because post-independent, we are always heard when we are kids, we always heard about the literacy mission. So literacy means that you are able to sign or you are able to write your name. And unfortunately, that things come into the education system as well. So what happens in a school? You will get a note from the teacher. You have certain chapters. You have to learn them. You have to, just in your mind, and then you have to reproduce on the answer sheet. So you are not actually gaining knowledge, and once you are not getting the knowledge, then your mind is blocked directly or indirectly, and that's why there is no innovation. So in our university, our main focus is that we are able to give students an open field, open idea that they should learn something which is really socially relevant. And based on that, we are trying to give them research. This is what my take on this.
Great, Mr. Narayan. I will come back to you with a few more following questions. Dr. Kavita, we would like to have your view on this line.
Yeah, thank you, Sudhir. And yes, so I am third in the line to speak, fourth in the line to speak. So most of the points the panelists have already kind of covered. So I agree with almost all the panelists here, Dr. Indu, Dr. Neha, and Devendra sir here. Yes, we had, when it comes to research in India, I think we had almost very redundant topics to work on, and it kind of almost became kind of an outdated titles we were working on. But I think now the scenario is changing, and many of us have realized this, and most of the webinars are focusing on this, and there are a lot of think tanks also who are kind of highlighting on this. So I think the COVID-19, I think this is something which made us really kind of, as education institutes, as academicians and academics, somebody who is into academics, right? I think it has made us to rethink, reinvent, and re-strategize, right from the curriculum, to the content, to the design, pedagogy, the delivery of the curriculum. So if we remember, whenever somebody said that they have done an online course, that we had our own apprehensions about the online courses. I think now the mindset has changed, and I think it's much more easier for us now to accept the change. So earlier there was a lot of reluctance from our side to accept changes. I think now we have got into a very natural flow to kind of invent and kind of reinvent. So right from the content to curriculum design, so right from that to value-added services, we did have internship, and now we have started thinking about apprenticeship. We are started thinking about live projects, hands-on and minds-on. So it's both hands-on and minds-on approach. So many people have started, also thinking of reskilling and upskilling as well. So more so, especially the people who have already placed. So even for them, it has become so challenging. They're looking back to the academics and started thinking, is there a course, is there some certification course that they can do, and they can possibly upskill themselves and get into this new challenging role. It has made all of us realize there has to be something different. We can't cling to what history was talking about. We can't keep sticking on to what we were earlier doing. I think now this is the time. I think we have to, and adding to this, I think the new NEP 2020, I think that's also something which came at the right time. And this is a phase wherein, all of us academicians, we are like open to so many suggestions. We are now having a lot of patience listening to others, and we are working in collaboration with the industry, and they are looking towards the academics. So there is this give and take kind of a scenario which has come into. And the NEP has definitely it has been designed in such a way that I think we have to, of course, we do compete with each other, but then we need to collaborate with each other as well. So wherein, be it the credit transfer, of course, there are certain clauses, terms and conditions for that as well attached. But then all that are for upgrading, almost all the schools, be it B schools or, private universities or the state universities or the central universities. I think the NEP, and we moving towards UNEP. So at Galgotias here, we have already started working towards implementation of NEP. Right now, we are at the process of pre-BOS discussions. So we have already started incorporating the curriculum, changes in the curriculum, wherein we are trying to fit in our programs as per the new NEP guidelines. And UP government has come up with lines of guidelines already, and we are trying to incorporate those. And along with this, when it comes to research, yes, we do have a lot of scholars here. So one thing that we started off this year was that, as Dr. Neha was also saying, that we are kind of very closely, and we are kind of doing a very appreciative inquiry on the titles of the research that the scholars are coming up with. As scholars, we can't say, because they have just started. They have just started the research journey. So they generally come up with a title which is something which is very familiar, wherein they can find good amount of review of literature and things like that. So we are trying to give them newer topics. And as Dr. Devendra sir was saying, we should have a research which has a social impact. So we are trying to come up with those titles which are more related to social enterprises, social impact. Like, we have titles more connected to the sustainability, be it waste management or recycling of water and urban planning, more so of specific cities in India. And enterprise, when I say, we are also bringing up a good amount of changes as far as incubators are concerned. So we are coming up with more of biotech related or deep tech related incubators as well. So the Center for Entrepreneurship is really kind of working a lot on, kind of helping these students who come up with ideas and trying to help them incubate, find venture capitalists and angel investors for their ideas. So these were these are few aspects wherein we are trying to make it much more, not just one more important thing here is we are not making it a very silo based be it curriculum design or be it the PhD supervisions or be it the title kind of freezing of the titles, and we are making it much more multidisciplinary. So it's not that even if a student, a scholar picks up management as a discipline, we do have the co-guides coming from healthcare or health sciences, and we do have co-guides coming from the engineering department. We have 13 schools, so that way we do have the co-guides coming from the different schools. So just this is a small step which we are taking towards making these as more of multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary research topics or studies. It was from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kavita. Absolutely, you're right. There is a very healthy and collaboration that is needed among various institutions, and there is also, I think, government's intervention is very much needed in this, be it state or center. I would come to Dr. Indu Rao. Ma'am, can you tell us, throw some light on what are the challenges? As Dr. Neha also mentioned that they're looking at the success or business success, be it of 5 crore or more than that. They're looking those who are local around there. At the same time, if we look at the problem as an opportunity for research and innovation, the problems which are surrounding us, what do you think are the challenges in that direction, especially towards the innovations and doing research? If you can please unmute.
You're right, Sudhir. And as Dr. Neha said, Dr. Kavita said, and Dr. Devinder said, we have challenges, and there are a huge amount of challenges that exist in our institutions. As Dr. Neha was rightly saying, number one, the sizes and the purpose for which different institutions and universities are existing are very different. And that's a very, very real situation. It's a genuine situation that not all universities even have the capability to afford so much of time and resources to research and innovation. That is the number one challenge. It is we are having assuming that you are fully dependent on the student fees to run your institute, and the student comes and tells you first thing, and that is happening. I have worked in several public and private universities across the country and also abroad in USA and Netherlands, and I see that especially in our Indian context, that problem is very much there. The students first thing they come and ask, what is the salary package I will get when I pass out? That is why I should invest so much fees in the course. Now, when that is the hanging sword on the administration, that unless all the effort is focused on how to get placement for the student, and on the other side we want our rankings to be top in the world, where the real parameters are research and innovation. Now, how do you expect a faculty and administrators of a university or an institution which is surviving on the placement for fees and to pay the salaries of the faculty, and that is how survive? So this is one of the biggest challenges. Then the second challenge is even the you see, NEP, as Dr. Kavita mentioned, I also fully agree with this. NEP is a wonderful move. In fact, to tell you, I have 2 PhDs, and the first PhD, which I did 20 years ago, is titled Operational Efficiency of Higher Education Technical Institutions, Case Study of Gujarat, Dr. Neha. And in that, I had written when I first came here to Gujarat that there is no connect between the academics and the industry. There has to be a bridge between the two. And unless we establish the bridge, that whatever why does the educational institution exist? It exists because it is drawing the raw material or the people, the students from the society, and preparing them and sending them back as professionals again to serve the society. So if educationists themselves, and I'm talking specifically of the faculty, if the faculty have only studied books and come and started teaching, if they have themselves never been a part of the industry, or if they have never been working in the social sphere, how are they going to make sure that whatever is the processing done to the students inside the university will help them prepare to serve the society or the industry? This is a very big question. This is a very, very relevant question, and even till date, there are points that I have that are there in the NEP. I'm very happy to see that I have written in my thesis 20 years ago, and I'm happy. But the implementation still does not come out in the NEP. How you will implement it is not there. I have written about that also. Slightly, I will share with you. If you are having, first of all, our policies of recruitment inside a university have to accommodate the practitioners. Our recruitment, our promotion, our leadership positions, if they are given to pure academicians, that means somebody who studied in the school, in the college, whether or not he or she was a topper, or whether or not has entered into the system through different means, and we all know what is going ahead. But if that person does not have a mix of industry, practice, teaching, research, academics, multidisciplinary background, if all of those things are not there, you should not give them leadership positions. I think even at entry, you should get preference. You should give preference to those people who have a mix of these qualities, not just marks. And marks, as such, I have question marks on the examination system. God knows why we are having this kind of assessment and examination system, which is leading us to nowhere except stress and anxiety for our students and for our teachers, because they're assessing all the year around. They're only assessing the students, and how will they do research and innovation? 4 things are very important, which is, I think, very much well highlighted in NEP 2020, multidisciplinary. I started as an electrical engineer, and then I moved into management, behavioral and sciences. And this multidisciplinary background gave me a whole new perspective of what things should be like. So multidisciplinary has to be approached, has to be favored. So long we have said somebody starts physics should be only doing studying and learning and doing papers on physics from the entry to college till the end, then how is that person going to understand where to apply that physics? Yes, if the physics has to be applied for social cause, for industry, for practice, for something, that person should have some exposure into the industry and the application side. So multidisciplinary background is required. Second is international. I very humbly, I am sharing that when I got scholarships to go to US, to Netherlands, and when I opened my eyes to what is happening around the world, international experience has to be supported, has to be valued. I know so many friends are from abroad now. If they have good publications and they're very highly qualified, our own system does not allow them to come in. People say that, no, a very qualified person, I will not allow you to come in. We are promoting mediocrity. We are not accepting merit. We are scared. We are insecure to allow the qualified people to get into the system. If they get in by mistake, we stop their promotions. We don't allow them to take leadership positions. So multidisciplinary, international, then academics. There has to be an amazing rigor in the academics. Of course, there are different pedagogy issues. There are different things that, people should not take teaching and learning as a very simple exercise. That itself is a science. And unless and until you yourself are clear about the topic that you are teaching, you will not allow that freedom and transparency in the class to allow the students to ask questions and explain to them what they should know. And the last one is research. See, I will give you one before concluding this. I'll give you a reason. My second PhD I did on research on the Indian diamond industry. So uneducated, 2 million people employed in the diamond industry of Gujarat. And we had never mentioned them, and they have 95% of global market share in cut and polished diamonds. $20 billion US industry, and none of the books, business books in India or abroad had even a mention of it. All right, they are uneducated, they are angutha chap, as we say, but they had the wisdom. Otherwise, how they will make such good entrepreneurs and successful entrepreneurs? So, and we call them unorganized. If they are able to provide, they are dropped maximum till class 10 they studied, forget business school, they dropped out in class 4 or 5. And if they can generate employment for 2 million people, and these people are coming from different states of the country, and they are all earning their livelihood, how we can say they don't have skill? I think it is our responsibility. I did research. It took me 8 years to study what is their knowledge, what is their wisdom, and I converted into a PhD thesis, which was stamped by 6 deans and directors of US and big Dutch universities. After that, I translated it into Gujarati and English simple and released the books with the hands of those diamond entrepreneurs. This research was cited by Business World, Business Standard, Times of India, Indian Express, so many places, and then some awards I got. Madam, are you teaching my Indian? For one case is there in the IIM Ahmedabad case studies, and there are many people who are using that. I hope somebody is at least using that in your business school, at least in Gujarat, because we are not even disseminating the good work done by our own Indian scholars and going to the people who have written it in the West. So these are examples. Even if such one thesis, we have 1,000 universities, I'm saying even one such thesis comes out of one university in 1 year. 1,000 universities in 25 years, we will have 25,000 such pieces of research, and see where the Indian ranking will go and how the Indian wisdom will come. And then industry will realize the importance of our academia, because we are creating a bridge between the industry and academia. This was one example, and it is possible if we have the passion, we can go ahead. And all of this will encourage research and innovation just by changing our online systems. Online, we did online faculty recruitment during COVID, we did online faculty orientation program, we did online teaching, online assessment, online evaluation. I have done 15,000 training for my faculty registrations for training programs for faculty only during COVID, because of COVID, I designed new systems, which is the innovation and process, and we are able to do it from homes and across all the domains. So innovation, necessity is the mother of invention. So COVID became a necessity for this invention. But I think if we all want, and Indians are very, very smart people, we just have to have the right direction. NEP is one, I think, and we should positively look at it and go ahead. All of us can embrace both research and innovation in our higher education, but we have to get prepared. There is still a long way to go.
Absolutely right, ma'am. As you mentioned, there is a lot for the preparedness to be in that line so that our ranking goes up. I should congratulate for your thesis on the diamond industry. It should be taken up. The thesis needs to be taken up at larger level. So these are the challenges that we are facing.
You will not believe, Sudhir, you will not believe we have Shodh Ganga platform. And I sent my PhD thesis is uploaded on the University of Twente website, which is top 200 QS ranking. I said, you at least upload it there so that somebody else wants to do it can see it. They said, no, the policy is only something done in Indian industry can be uploaded. In the Indian university can be uploaded. So I've written to them, please look at it. There's an Indian scholar working in Indian university. It took so much pains to get it endorsed outside. Why don't you upload it? So, these are the small things we have to change. We have to come out of it.
Yes, ma'am. Doing our part, ma'am, we would like to have your thesis paper in our magazine, in our portal. We would like to have some authored articles from you. We will do our bit, because our magazines and will go to all the policymakers across the country. So maybe that would help in some way, and it would also help the research and innovation ecosystem in our country. Now I would like to come to Dr. Kavita. Dr. Kavita, what is the challenge you find and that needs to be worked upon?
Yes, so challenges are many. In fact, as Dr. Indu was also telling, so one is even though the NEP policy has been well designed and well informed to everybody, and it has got a very wide acceptance as well. But when we are actually now trying to fit into our program structure as a pre-BOS activity, we are trying to get that clarity, because see, when it comes to the academic credit system, the credit bank thing, so there are, it's very, very well defined. There is a diploma, there is a certificate, there is a diploma, there is a bachelor's, right? So 4 years bachelor's, all that's pretty clear that way. But then when it comes to credit transfer, so in order to have that compatibility, So they are saying 70% of the syllabus has to be matching, almost. So the 30% of the syllabus is something wherein we have the flexibility of incorporating our own modules into a particular course. So I'm just kind of. So now the challenge here is now how well a particular course is defined by the guidelines, wherein, of course, there are no, so far there is no guideline yet which has been released for the management related discipline, but for almost all other disciplines there are, and I think for engineering and management discipline, we are yet to receive that from the UP government. So, but yes, so now here, of course, there are few more courses which are made compulsory, irrespective of what a child, what a student is getting into, whichever discipline they are getting into. They are very good courses. Like, earlier, only few of the course, schools and universities used to focus on holistic education and things like that, be it health, hygiene, a few of the sustainability related or more of social concern related projects or courses. So those few of the schools were doing. Now almost all the schools or almost all the universities and the programs will start working on it. But now this is also somewhere looking like a constraint. The 70% of the similarity that we need to have, and only 30% of that flexibility in the curriculum is something which is one challenge I see as far as the curriculum is concerned. As far as the research is concerned, as Dr. Devendra sir was also saying, that mindset, we still need to align ourselves, to get into that mindset of coming up with more of an industry kind of a research, industry research. I find academia is still very, we are still kind of having, more inclination towards the structure of the thesis, be it research methodology. Our research generally ends up with data collection, putting it into a software, run a particular software technique, get an output, infer the data, and you accept or fail to accept the hypothesis, and it just stops there, most of our research papers. But then I think something which is required here is that we need to move beyond this inference, and just our paper should not just end at accepting or fail to accept a hypothesis, but I think we need to move beyond that and bring in the implications, be it the managerial implications, be it the market implications, be it the industry implications or the policy implications. Wherein, if our research, each of those, our scholars' research, as ma'am was saying, Dr. Indu was saying, so in her thesis, she brought in and she had a message to the ministry there. Right? So if each of our research comes up with a solid study, which brings in those policy implications, and if we are able to, of course, we do come up with research papers out of our thesis, but then if we can come up with a policy handbook, if we are able to possibly, suggest, give recommendations, or rather, I would use the word suggestion here to the ministries. So if we can submit a report, to the respective ministries, that possibly if there is something that we can add to the existing knowledge, then I think that's something which is really going to take us way ahead. And as many of us on this panel do feel that it's going to happen, but then it is definitely going to take time. So I think these are few challenges we have to, phase on phase. I think we'll have to kind of, pass them and kind of we need to figure out solutions for this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kavita, for sharing your views on that. Dr. Neha, I would come to you for your views on that.
I will go. I do a lot of out of the box or creative thinking workshop for school kids, just as a part of helping out. And I make them do one exercise in the beginning. I ask them to draw a nature scenery. And I also do ask my postgraduate students who come to me to do the same thing. And you will not believe everybody draws the same nature scenery in India. We have mountains, we have sun rising, we have a bird flying, we have a lake or a pond with one or two lotus, we have a temple, and then depending on how, then you have a fish. And I think that's where our biggest problem is coming in research. Because, and when I ask them that why is your nature scenery like this, and most schools now I'm seeing a little bit of changes with I think different boards coming up. They're saying, but we are graded in drawing exam. So in drawing, we are told that when you do a nature scenery, this is how you do a nature scenery. When you do a birthday party, you should show a birthday cake. Now, my concern why I'm bringing this to you is that we are talking about research, but that foundation sets at a very school level. At a school level, I'm telling the kids that drawing, where you're supposed to express your creativity, is also being curbed by marks. Right. So I have to do a nature scenery like this. So then I think so somewhere there's a lot of change, and those students who don't abide by it don't get marks. So what do parents tell them? That array in drawing also you're not able to score. Why can't you do this? So I asked my postgrad students to do the same exercise, and they come back with the same thing. And what I've realized is the biggest challenge, I think, is, which I think the other esteemed managers have also mentioned, we have to some way do away with this cramming of our exams, or do away with, the old system which probably in which we studied. Because they have Google. Google is giving them all the information. So even the retention is very different. How I studied, or most of the people of my age studied, we had to know the whole Kotler. Kotler was our Bible. If you didn't know Kotler, that means you can't be a manager, marketing specialization. But these days, they have Kotler on Google. So we can take it slightly forward, or like, as Dr. Kavita mentioned about the implications part or the managerial part of it. But the sad part of it, the minute in your research papers you talk about implications or managerial implications, you cannot go beyond 10,000 words. You cannot go beyond 5,000 words, 10,000 words. The minute you try to do that, so either you cut down on your data analysis, you cut down on a literature review. So even the research houses are not allowing us to actually be able to do a thorough job with the research papers. It could be, because of constraints of size, or I don't know, but most of the ABTC journals, if you look, they are now coming down from, bigger papers to smaller papers. So I think the challenges which lie in front of us in India are manifold, right from the primary, which comes to my higher education, and that is what is stopping my students. I'm not talking about people who are going to IITs. They're a different breed. I'm talking about my common Indian middle class man who comes to me, who studies under me, but is going to the same rut because his parents don't give him the luxury to think creatively. And I think that has to be fundamentally the second thing I just want to say, it's not a challenge which I want to share, is based on the system which Dr. Indu also mentioned about changing the system. Most of my marketing students who are very street smart but don't score well are the ones who actually get picked up by my FMCG students. So they are not scoring so well. They might have a B average, or just a B average, because that's what you need to get into an Asian Paints or a Nestle or a ITC, but they are the first ones to get picked up. And that's when I tell my, toppers that, listen, guys, you need to understand that this is multidisciplinary that we're talking about. So that's what I would like to say, because it's just repeating otherwise. Yes?
Thank you very much, Dr. Neha. We, being in the last session of the conclave, we would be having the privilege of our program chair, the additional chief secretary, Mr. Satyajit Rajan, would be joining us. Till then, we have the time and privilege to continue. I would come to Mr. Devendra Narayan. I think there was a connectivity issue, but just to give you, we were talking about Mr. Narayan about the challenges. Dr. Indu has thrown some overall holistic view on the challenges that's happening, and also some points that came in from Dr. Kavita and also Dr. Neha. Would like to have your view on that.
See, definitely, challenges are the basically cause of innovation, because there is no challenge, there is no innovation. At least this pandemic give us nothing but basically, the teachers are now accepting the new things. Before pandemic, suppose if somebody told us that, now you have to go for online classes, will we really able to do that? That we are not of opposition. Nobody like to go for online classes if we tell teachers before pandemic that you are supposed to go and teach your students online. Now, as soon as the pandemic started, we immediately adapted all these things and we are looking for something new. As I told you initially also, my basic concern is that until we are not able to understand the difference, what education means, we always try, my biggest concern is that, with due respect to all the management institute, especially when we tell them to teach MBA, we're still talking about entrepreneurship, but actually MBA is not, talking about employability and jobs. But actually the MBA is not about employability and job. It is basically to tell them how to be an entrepreneur. And entrepreneur not means only the people who are going to start their business. I'm sitting on the chair, I'm a director of corporate relation as a position. If I'm start thinking from a businessman point of view, I'm an entrepreneur from my position. A small vendor who's selling vegetable in the market, he's an entrepreneur himself. So we need to tell our students that what exactly entrepreneurship is all about.
Absolutely.
We need to tell them what innovation is all about, what research is all about. Since school, the only objective parents, teachers, council, आपको बड़ा होकर के अच्छी नौकरी करनी है. This is our mindset. So if we really want to make our university research oriented, if we really want that our students should do innovation, then we need to change our mind first. And then you're not supposed to talk about employability, you're supposed to talk about innovation. And innovation not only means in a particular area without salary, without money. Innovation can be with money, with learning, with education, accepting the knowledge. Thank you. This is what my
thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Devendra Nair. As you rightly pointed out, these are the things, as Dr. Indu was also telling, they talk about the package that has when the students join. So we are with this, we would come to an end of this session. We are glad that the program chair of this conclave, APAC Skill and Entrepreneurship Innovation Conclave, the program chair for this, hosted by the Government of Kerala, Department of Labor and Skill, and our program chair, Sri Satyajit Rajanji, has joined us. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us once again. We are at the end of this session. We are joined by Dr. Indu Rao from Vellore Institute of Technology, Neha Patil from Sobh Lalit Institute of Management Studies, Mr. Devendra Narayan, who's the director with the Shobhit University, and Dr. Kavita Mathur, who is the dean and professor with Galgotias University. Sir, over to you. My colleague Souvik Goswami, APAC, who is the chief group editor with the APAC News Network. Over to you, Mr. Goswami.
Thank you so much, Sudhir, for wonderfully playing the role of moderator in various sessions for last 2 days. I thank you personally for doing that role and playing that role. And I also thank the speakers of the last session of this 2-day conclave, Professor Indu Rao, Dr. Neha Patil, Dr. Kavita Mathur, and Mr. Devendra. We are joined by the man behind this conclave, Program Chair Sri Satyajit Rajan, IAS Additional Chief Secretary, Labour and Skills Department, Government of Kerala. He has been the force who inspired us to organize this event. And this 2-day event, we got more than 500-700 delegates who have attended this conference, and almost 50 plus speakers from various aspects of skilling and entrepreneurship, from higher education sector, from state governments, from startup ecosystem, and also our partners. So with this, I will request Satyajit Rajan to say a few words at the end of the 2-day conclave. Over to you, Sri Rajan.
So first of all, I presume that all the speakers have spoken of this session.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So basically a Thanksgiving session. All of you have taken time out and have been able to be with us, and people in Kerala and across the country have been watching all of you. So something which we just couldn't think of a year ago. Getting a wide range of high-end speakers for a particular program. So in these COVID-initiated online times, it's happening. And in fact, we had, Souvik. Now let's also look at international speakers. We had a program here organized by the planning board. Our planning secretary, Dr. Venu, he's a colleague, so he was the initiator for the program. So they had, speakers from Republic of Korea, Germany, and I think one more country. It is possible, just like the future of education is. How many universities, I find in a lot of university participation happened in this program. We do not know how many of these universities are going to exist in the coming times, because the leading universities like Harvard, once they get into online education, so they will dominate. People will pay 10 times higher price because education is very, very important to them, and they would like to have a degree from Harvard. So there was a study a couple of months back which said that maybe in the world, maybe not more than 10 universities will exist in the coming times. There will be universities will cater to the local crowd, but international universities will be very, very few. So there will be a big competition, and some Indian universities must emerge. And there are many Indian universities which have the capacity to be at par with the best in the world. They have to emerge. And Souvik, I would like to thank all the speakers who have come and joined and have given us ideas which will forward. And Souvik, you have been the man behind it. You have been really able to coordinate it so well. You, Sudhir, and the team, there have been 10 of you working day and night for the last 2 months, which has made this particular conclave happen. And I thank all of you. And with that, I will like to conclude my talk. I don't know whether I should apologize for being in car and talking, but I think this moving car also is my voice all right? Are you able to listen to what I'm saying?
It's perfectly all right, sir.
So a conclave, if it had happened in Delhi or in Hyderabad, I would have had to give 3 days, or Trivandrum, since it is a Kerala conclave. So I would have had to give 2 days, and all of you, if you're coming here, so at least 3 days minimum you had to give. But now giving 1 hour or 2 hours, you are able to participate. And then, the other speakers, you can always listen to them. You can choose which speaker to listen. So the speakers will be competing with each other to give the best, because not every speaker is going to be heard in online times. You have to be good, and you have to innovate constantly so that you are accepted. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sri Rajan. Satyajit Rajan, Additional Chief Secretary, Labour and Skills Department, Government of Kerala, who is the program chair, the main man behind this conclave, who envisioned this conclave that let's do something where we can bring best of the minds across India, from higher education sector, from various state governments, from startup ecosystem, on how to bend the mind to the entrepreneurial mode, be it ITIs, be it IITs, be it school. And if you see for last 2 day discussion, be it inaugural or each and every session, most of the speakers have harped on that point that time has come that we imbibe this skill, the entrepreneurial mindset in students, not only in universities. Let's start it from school. Let's also focus on the soft skill part. Let's also focus on the digital disruptions, which are happening. So if I may just take the crux of last 2 days discussion, I think that has been the crux. And also we can see the best of the practices of various state governments, various foundations like Udayam Foundation, their best practices have been shared. And I'm sure that Mr. Rajan will be happy with the outcome. We'll be documenting the outcome of this 2 days deliberation, and we'll be giving it an event report form, and we'll be circulating with all the stakeholders across India. And we take the suggestions of Mr. Rajan that next time when we do this, we'll surely have international participation as well, because we can have the global perspective as well. With this, I again thank all of you for joining us for 2 days. And before I conclude, I think it's my duty to thank our partners. Without them, this event would not have been possible. First and foremost, the Labour and Skills Department, Government of Kerala, for being the host partner of this very important conclave on skill and entrepreneurial sector. Principal banking partner, SBI, State Bank of India. State supporting partners, ACE and Kerala ITI. University partners, Amrita University and innovation partner, Big Innovation Center. And supporting partner, that is Task and VHub from Telangana, and Electronic Sector Skill Council of India. With this, I again thank all of you for joining us. And as Mr. Rajan has said, yes, me, my colleagues, the entire team APEC has worked hard for the last 2 months or so to make this even possible. I thank my colleagues as well, Sudhir Gautam, Gopi Arora, Sangamita Mohanty, my backend team, Mr. Prabhakar, our web team, Mr. Suman, Ms. Shivani, Ms. Neha, Mr. Utkarsh, and Mr. Akash Rajagarwal. I thank all of them. I wish all of them could have joined, but they're all busy with their work. And so I think it's a team game. When Team APAC and Team Kerala join hands together, this is the outcome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us.